Just back from Quantico, Virginia, the president had a message for his top military leaders. No more fatzos, or you're fired. We're going to show you exactly what Trump said at Quantico and what the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, had to say and the reaction. Also, it looks like we might have a government shutdown tonight, and the way the polls are showing it, everyone knows exactly whose fault it is. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and they are flailing. Just wait till you see the last 24 hours of their public messages, and J.D. Vance absolutely smacked them down in public. It's great. And you're going to see that coming up in a sec. Plus, Don Lemon appears to be racist. Same with Ilhan Omar. Same with Joy Reid. Same with Ta-Nehisi Coates in the New York Times. A lot of racists out there. They don't like white people. We're going to show you what they had to say. And a candidate with good ideas and common sense solutions who wants to be governor of California, Leo Zacky, is going to join us for a one-on-one. That's all coming up right now. We're still in Montreal. Sacre bleu. I'm Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Sacre bleu. How come every time an American tries to speak French, they sound like Pepe Le Pew? It's just the thing. It's just the thing. It's how we do it. Thank you for watching. Thanks for liking this video and leaving your comments in your chat. By the way, if you have any recommendations for me in Montreal for my cuisine, please let me know down in the chat. Should I get poutine or steak tartare? Let me know right down there in the live chat. And I promise I'll be looking. I know I'm not going to see hockey because they don't know how to play that up here. That's an American sport. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And thanks for the support you give to our show every single day. And thank you to our friends at Birch Gold for the same. When inflation jumps, when you hear the national debt is over $37 trillion, do you ever think maybe now would be a good time to buy some gold? Well, whether it's a hedge against inflation or just for sensible diversification, Birch Gold Group believes every American should own physical gold, and they want to make it super easy for you. That's why all month long, ending today, they've had an incredible offer. And if you've been thinking about it and putting it off, today is your last day to take advantage of it. They're offering a rebate of up to $10,000 in free metals on qualifying purchases if you're a first-time gold buyer. You got to claim eligibility to start that process. Today's the day to do it. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. You're going to get a free info kit on gold. Plus, Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA and 401k into an IRA in physical gold, and you're still eligible for that rebate in free metals up to $10,000. See, this isn't new money they're asking for. It's money you've already got sitting in an account right now. You can roll it over into gold. But you got to text my name, Larry, to 989898. Claim your eligibility. Again, text Larry to 989898. Do it today. Well, for the last several days, the media has been in a panic because the commander-in-chief, along with the Secretary of War, called all of the generals and admirals in the military who are available to Quantico, Virginia, to have a face-to-face meeting. And so the commander-in-chief and Secretary of War could address them face-to-face, look them in the eyes, and tell them what's expected of them. And apparently that's a constitutional crisis. Yes, that's right. The civilian control of the military, exercising control over the military by calling a meeting, is a constitutional crisis. Well, this has never been done before. I don't know. I think it has been done before. I'm pretty sure that back in World War II, when Roosevelt wanted to deal with his generals, they didn't have a Zoom call. I'm pretty sure Lincoln called his generals in rather than have some sort of FaceTime with them. Why is everyone so stupid in Washington, D.C. and in the media? Well, the meeting is over, and we've got some reports and some live video. Well, not live video, but we took live video from the event. Let's start with Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, as he was about to board Marine One to head over to Quantico.
I'm going over. I'm going to be meeting with generals and with admirals and with leaders. And if I don't like somebody, I'm going to fire him right on the spot.
I love that that was the mic drop moment as he, I'm going down. I got to meet with him, and if I don't like him, I'm going to fire him. And he can. He didn't, by the way, spoiler alert. But Secretary of War Hegseth actually did lay out some new standards for the generals and all of the officers and enlisted in their ranks about what's now expected from the military.
This, and I want to be very clear about this, this is not about preventing women from serving. We very much value the impact of female troops. Our female officers and NCOs are the absolute best in the world. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. It will also mean that weak men won't qualify because we're not playing games. This is combat. This is life or death. As we all know, this is you versus an enemy hell-bent on killing you. To be an effective, lethal fighting force, you must trust that the warrior alongside you in battle is capable, truly physically capable of doing what is necessary under fire. You know, this is the only standard you would want for your kids and for your grandkids. Apply the War Department Golden Rule, the 1990 test, and the E6 test, and it's really hard to go wrong.
Now, this deserves some important context and analysis. Now, up until now, for the last couple of decades, generals and officers in command have gotten the exact opposite message from the Secretary of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief. And that was lower standards, change standards, modify standards so that you can achieve the goals of diversity and inclusion. And that's always delivered via email or some sort of PowerPoint presentation or just a memo, because the Secretary of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief didn't want to look their leaders in the eye and tell them that they were reducing standards to meet a goal that has nothing to do with winning wars. Now that the Secretary of War and the Commander-in-Chief are actually saying, no, our priority is to make sure we meet the physical standards required and necessary to win in combat. He wants to stand there and own those words, own those policies, and not deliver it in some memo or email. He's looking them square in the eye and saying, yes, this is what's expected. That takes balls, frankly, and it's the right way to do it. Let's also be clear that he kept reiterating in that passage right there with regard to physical standards for women and men that this had to do with combat roles. Combat. If you are going to be performing in combat, whether you're a man or a woman, you've got to meet certain physical standards. Otherwise, it is what it is. And I just want to say, as the father of a young woman in the military, a junior officer, I appreciate this. I appreciate this on two levels. Number one, if my daughter does not meet the physical standards for a combat role, I don't want her going into combat. Number two, if my daughter does meet the physical standards for going into combat and she is sent to combat, I want to make sure that the man or woman on either side of her can also meet those goals. What's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that. And that doesn't mean that women are going to be excluded from the military. It means that men and women who can't meet physical standards will be excluded from combat roles in the military. And that's a bare minimum of what we should expect from our military. Hegseth then turned his sights on the physical fitness of the men and women that were sitting in that room, the flag officers, the generals, the admirals, because, well, you've seen these dudes. You've seen some of the women. You look twice at them thinking, hold on, you're a general? Because you don't look like you could do a push-up.
With physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular hard PT, so can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the joint force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year, every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day. Should be common sense. I mean, most units do that already.
In other words, no more fat generals, no more fat admirals, and no more fatzos in the military. You're going to do PT every day. And if you are concerned that you don't meet the physical requirements to be able to do PT every day, just show up and do it every day. And before you know it, you're going to be just fine. That's how physical training works. And if you can't do that, then, well, you know how to get out. In fact, with all of the policies that were directed, and again, I just want to reiterate how important it is that the Secretary of Defense, a lot of people have been complaining about Pete Hegseth going out and doing all these public displays with cameras around of running and ground fighting and push-ups and pull-ups and all this stuff. It hasn't been there for a photo op. It's not there just to show off. It is there to inspire other young men and women who value their physical fitness and physical training and want to be a part of a culture and work ethic that has those demands and expectations on them. So it has increased recruitment for the military. But the reason that he's been doing it for the last 9 months is for one very important reason. So he could stand here today, look these generals in the eyes and say, if I can do it, civilian leadership of the military, you all can do it. You're in uniform. And that's a very powerful message. And I want to reiterate, standing there, calling them all here from all around the world to sit there and hear this message delivered directly to them is incredibly powerful and, frankly, is the right, respectful, honorable thing to do. That's what the military is supposed to be about. And Hegseth had one more message about the physical fitness requirements and any of the other policies that the new administration and the new Pentagon has laid out for the leadership here, for all the generals and admirals, because he understands that not all of them are on board. He understands that not all of them are thrilled with the new direction of the military. He understands that a lot of them signed up under Bill Clinton or under Barack Obama, and they had a very different vision of the military, and that vision has changed now. And by the way, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, very specifically ran on this. If you watch any of the stump speeches that Trump gave in the 2024 election, part of it was, we're going to fix the military. They're going to go back to war fighting again, and they're going to change their focus and change their priorities. So this should have been expected. But he recognizes not everybody's on board, and he had a message for those people who are not on board.
To our great republic, at great sacrifice to yourselves and to your families. But if the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign. We would thank you for your service. But I suspect, I know, the overwhelming majority of you feel the opposite. These words make your hearts full. You love the War Department because you love what you do, the profession of arms. You are hereby liberated to be an apolitical, hard-charging, no-nonsense, constitutional leader that you joined the military to be. We need you locked in on the M, not the D, the E, or the I, not the DEI or the DIE of dime. By that I mean the M. Military, of the instruments of national power. We have entire departments.
I can just tell you from my own personal experience, and I'm sure a lot of you are either in the military, retired military, or you have family members or friends who are either in the military, in the reserves, or still serving, or retired from the military. And go ahead and let me know if your experience is the same as mine. Let me know in the chat or in the comments if you're watching on demand. Based on everybody I know in the military, active duty and retired, every single thing Hegseth just said resonates with them. They've been dying to hear this from their leaders. It's been decades since they heard this from the leaders. President Trump was then introduced by Pete Hegseth, and it was quite a scene as all of the generals did what is appropriate and customary. They silently and respectfully stood at attention when the president came out. It's not something President Trump is used to when being introduced to a room full of people. So watch what happened. It's actually pretty funny.
So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the 45th and 47th President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, Pete. Great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very, don't laugh, don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future.
That's a great moment. And I love the live action from the camera that caught all of that. But yeah, he was already briefed ahead of time. Just, Mr. President, they're not going to applaud. They're not going to react. They're just going to stand at attention. They're disciplined, and they're told they're not supposed to react. That's why when they started laughing, he goes, don't laugh. Don't laugh. If you don't like what I say, you can leave. Of course, you'll lose your rank. All right. So let's take some highlights of the Commander-in-Chief's address to these generals today. This has been a historic morning, and I'm glad we can share this together. Let's just plow through these.
We're bringing back a focus on fitness, ability, character, and strength. And that's because the purposes of the American military is not to protect anyone's feelings. It's to protect our republic, and it's the republic that we dearly love. It's to protect our country. We will not be politically correct when it comes to defending American freedom, and we will be a fighting and winning machine. We want to fight, we want to win, and we want to fight as little as possible. You have to count on people like me to keep you out of wars, because we don't want to go into wars.
All right. All of that is music to their ears, by the way. And I do like the fact that he sort of laid out there saying, we're not here to protect anybody's feelings. We're here to protect the country. We're here to protect the homeland. That's our priority, not protecting people's feelings. Sorry, not sorry. And he also reiterated, and most of these generals agree with this, we want you to be the best on the planet in the history of warfare so that no one F's with us. The whole point of the money that we spend and the training that we do and the armaments we invest in for these soldiers and airmen and sailors and seamen and Marines to utilize, and Guardians, sorry, Space Force, the whole point of that investment is so it never has to get used in war. I'm a president who wants the military to be the very greatest in our history, so it never has to be used in war. That's Trump's approach to all of this. And then he went on to talk a little bit about the nation that these men and women are dedicated to serving, and about the problems that we've had in some of our major cities in this country, because the military might be called at various times to reinforce law enforcement to bring order to those cities as well. Take a listen.
I went out to dinner with my crew. I haven't done that. In theory, I wouldn't do it. And I felt totally safe. And nobody's been attacked. Nobody's been hurt. Washington, D.C. went from our most unsafe city to just about our safest city in a period of a month. We had it under control in 12 days, but give us another 15, 16 days. It's perfect. And people other than politicians that look bad, they think, the Democrats run most of the cities that are in bad shape. We have many cities in great shape too, by the way. I want you to know that. But it seems that the ones that are run by the radical left Democrats, what they've done to San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're very unsafe places. And we're going to straighten them out one by one. And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war too. It's a war from within. Controlling the physical territory of our border is essential to national security. We can't let these people in.
All right. And then the president, hate to break it to you if you haven't seen the news already, and it's going to get a whole lot of attention. So it's better that you hear it from me and see it from me here, framed properly. The president, in the middle of this address, he dropped the N-word. I'm just telling you, watch.
That people throw around that word. I call it the N word. There are two N words, and you can't use either of them. You can't use either of them. And frankly, if it does get to use, we have more than anybody else. We have better, we have newer, but it's something we don't ever want to even have to think about.
Of course, I meant nuclear. I don't know what you think I meant. He's talking about our nuclear weapons and our nuclear triad and the strategy of nuclear warfare. It's the N-word. He loves that joke.
Legacy, we don't want that. You walk nice and easy. You don't have to set any record. Be cool. Be cool when you walk down, but don't pop down the stairs. So one thing with Obama, I had zero respect for him as a president, but he would bop down those stairs. I've never said, da-da-da-da-da-da, pop, pop, pop. He'd go down the stairs, wouldn't hold on. I said, it's great. I don't want to do it. I guess I could do it. But eventually, bad things are going to happen. And it only takes once. But he did a lousy job as president.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. But for some reason, Trump went off script and started talking about how you're supposed to go down the steps of Air Force One and how much he admires Obama for bopping down the stairs. I'm sorry, how did he put that again?
Don't bop down the stairs. So one thing with Obama, I had zero respect for him as a president, but he would bop down those stairs. I've never said, da-da-da-da-da-da, pop, pop, pop. He'd go down the stairs, wouldn't hold on. I said,
I mean, it's what Trump does. He goes off script sometimes. I've never seen this part of his shtick, but okay. Don't you think every general plans on writing a book after their service when they retire? They're all writing in their journal or in their diary as they're heading back to their post right now about this speech and about Trump talking about Obama bopping down the stairs. All right. He went back on script eventually, though. Go ahead, Mr. President.
every single one of them hit its target. It was total obliteration. CNN, when we came back, fake news CNN, oh, their camera just went off. You know, their camera, every time I mention they turn the camera up because it's never good. They say, this is a problem. I don't blame them. You're better off keeping it off. But they have some scammer reporter who started saying, without any knowledge, said, he may not have hit the targets as well as they thought. It may not have been obliteration. He did hit the targets, and I got to give us a little credit, right? It was obliteration, it turned out.
Of course, President Trump was talking about the successful strike against the Iran nuclear facilities. But really, the main focus of this part of the speech has to be fake news CNN. By the way, people in the military love this. Every single one of the generals and admirals who were involved in the incredible strike against the Iran nuclear facility, they know what an incredible feat of military genius they carried off. They know what was involved in coordinating the Air Force and the Navy in getting that done. And they know that when CNN went out and tried to undermine their abilities and undermine their effectiveness, it was rude, it was disrespectful, and it was, frankly, offensive to the men and women. And think about the pilots who flew 36 hours in their stealth bombers to get over to Iran from Missouri. Think about all of the support personnel that were needed to do that. Think about the submarine in the Persian Gulf that fired their, I believe they were Triton missiles, at the bunker and hit the target from underwater by within the size of a quarter. And then they get some idiot reporter on CNN. We're told that it really didn't do much damage, and they know better. And they love the fact that the president goes after the media for undermining their ability and all the work that they've done. And I love it. And you should too. By the way, I believe he had more to say about the media in his remarks. Why not?
But fortunately, the military didn't believe it. It's hard. You know, they make up a statement and they said, you say it. We had 25 people that said he never said that. 25. We had 25 affidavits. And they said, well, we're going with it anyway. You know, these sleazebags. And that's why the press is really losing all power, because people aren't believing it. We need an honest press. We need borders. We need borders. We need an honest press. We need fair elections. I mean, those three things. And we don't have an honest press. We have a really corrupt press, but we fight through the corrupt press. And the people understand you have to do this stuff a lot. You have to go on television a lot because you can't get a fair shake if you're going to rely on somebody else. They don't understand. They've destroyed the image of media now is at the lowest point it's ever been. It's lower than Congress. Can you believe that? It's
all right, and that is our cursory wrap up of the president's remarks to the military and the Secretary of War's remarks to the military, just wrapped up about an hour ago. And you're going to see a lot of analysis and a lot of hair on fire about this thing. There was nothing abnormal about this other than commanders in chief haven't done this in a while because they haven't had the same focus on the military that this president and Secretary of War has, and they haven't radically altered the course and direction of the military the way this president has done in focusing once again on what the Department of War, formerly Defense, was designed to do, which is have the best, most capable, well-equipped military focused on their job of winning wars. Because of the mission creep that the Pentagon has undergone for the last several decades, focusing on social justice and diversity and inclusion and worrying more about hurting the feelings of the people who wear uniform rather than, hurting the livelihood and well-being of our enemies. Well, because that mission creep has taken over, they've never called all the generals together and say, okay, we've got a new focus now. We're going to focus on diversity, because that's never how it happens. It's always little by little by little that the focus of an original smart and well-intentioned government program like the Department of Defense or War, they never change on a dime like that and degrade and ruin the focus that they were originally created for. It always happens little by little, memo by memo, policy by policy, email by email. And before you know it, after 20 years, you look around saying, what the hell are we doing here? We're not even focused on our mission anymore. And that's never done with a big speech with everyone gathered in one room. But when you turn back and you refocus everyone, that's when you have everyone in the room. That's when you crack the whip a little and say, stop, turn around and go back to where we started. That's what we're doing now. And if you're not following with us, that's fine. Thank you for your service. There's the door. That's what today was all about. Don't believe any of the other noise you're going to hear on cable news tonight. At midnight tonight, the end of the fiscal year for the government will occur. And if there isn't a new agreement for funding the new fiscal year that begins at midnight on October 1st, then we will have, a funding crisis, which often results in what the media and Democrats like to call a government shutdown, which, of course, is not a government shutdown. The government is not shut down. There are oodles of essential services that keep churning out, and usually employees of the federal government are furloughed. They are sent home for what is essentially a delayed paid vacation. They don't come to work, but when they're brought back to work, they get all their back pay. Some employees will have to come to work, the essential employees, and again, they will get all of their back pay once the government is funded, and it will get funded. Our military will keep working, our air traffic controllers will keep working, and other essential employees. The EPA, it's my favorite stat. I get to cover these things whenever it happens because I'm a radio host in Washington, D.C. My favorite stat whenever there's a government shutdown is that roughly 92% of the personnel in the Environmental Protection Agency are kept home because they're non-essential. 92% of the entire agency is non-essential. That's what will happen tonight at midnight if the government is not funded. But it doesn't have to happen. You see, for about 13 cycles now, there has been what's called a continuing resolution, where Congress gets together and they say, all right, we don't have new funding yet. We don't have the new budget passed. It happens. let's just have a continuing resolution and we'll keep spending at our current rates and nothing will get shut down. Now, again, I want to assure you this has happened over a dozen times in the last couple of years, but not this time. This time, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the leaders of the Democrat minority, they are refusing to go along with the continuing resolution. They are demanding $1.5 trillion in new spending. Otherwise, there will be a shutdown. And if there is a shutdown, obviously, it's their fault for not going along with the continuing resolution as they have in the past. Now, if you're old enough to remember government shutdowns going all the way back to Newt Gingrich in the mid-90s, you'll know that this is often a political disaster for Republicans. But something's changed this time around. Something's different. A couple of things are different. I'm going to tell you what I think is the biggest game changer here, and it's a part of the story that not a lot of people on cable news are talking about. I'll tell you that in a second, but first, take a look at this poll from the New York Times. This is huge. In fact, the most important part of this poll is not just the results, but it actually starts with the question that is being asked. Look at the question the New York Times asked the American people in this poll. Views on whether the Democrats should or should not shut down the government if their demands are not met. Do you see that? If you know political polling, you know that part of the fight, part of the result is how you ask the question. This question puts all of the responsibility on the shoulders of the Democrats. I've never seen the New York Times do this before. See, the New York Times of 10 years ago, when Barack Obama was president, would have said, should the Republicans recklessly and irresponsibly shut down the government because they're not getting their demands in the budget negotiations from Barack Obama? Something like that. So it's built into the question that it's the Republicans' fault because it's the Republicans doing. The fact that the New York Times asked the question this way means that they cannot deny the obvious fact that this is the Democrats. And look at the results. 65% of all respondents say the Democrats should not unilaterally shut down the government to get their own way. Democrats, by the way, barely in favor of it, 47 to 43, and of course Republicans to a tune of 92 to 5. So why have the Democrats lost the confidence of the American people and even the New York Times in this fight? Well, much of it has to do with their leadership. Yesterday morning, before he even went to the White House to have a face-to-face meeting with Donald Trump, here was Hakeem Jeffries basically telling you exactly what Democrats are doing. And he told you in a very clever way, this is what Democrats always do. He denied he was doing exactly what he was doing. Watch.
Federal law prohibits the expenditure of taxpayer dollars on providing health care to undocumented immigrants. Nowhere have Democrats suggested that we're interested in changing federal law.
Now, this is hilarious because you've got governors all around the country, Democrats, who are screaming about the fact that illegal immigrants, illegal aliens are now not getting any health care coverage. But meanwhile, Hakeem Jeffries is preemptively trying to quash any kind of complaints that he is, along with Chuck Schumer, demanding billions and billions of dollars to give health care to illegal immigrants because he's saying, well, it's against the law to give health care to illegal immigrants, while at the same time, of course, he is demanding health care for illegal immigrants. You know that's what he's doing because he's already preemptively denying it. Here's Chuck Schumer, here's Hakeem Jeffries a little later in the morning laying out exactly what their strategy is. Take a listen to what their argument is for shutting down the government. And again, this is right before they went to the White House.
Hakeem. Thank you, Chuck. Republicans control the House, Republicans control the Senate, and Donald Trump is the president. The government shuts down. It's because Republicans have decided to shut the government down and hurt the American people. And that's a point that we made loudly and clearly in that meeting.
I apologize. This is immediately after the meeting. I I was mistaken because we're about to show you clips from the White House when the meeting occurred. But this is Hakeem Jeffries after his meeting. But understand what he just prefaced there. Republicans control everything. So if we have a shutdown, it's their fault. Now listen to what he says.
It was a frank and sharp discussion about the path forward. We made clear that we are ready, willing, and able over these next 36 or so hours to find a bipartisan path forward to fund the government and avoid a shutdown. But any agreement must be bipartisan in nature, and it's got to meet the needs of the American people.
Yeah, and when he says the needs of the American people, what he means is his constituents and his big, powerful base, like the teachers' unions and the government worker unions and healthcare workers and illegal immigrants. But look at what he just said. He just contradicted himself in his own statement. Republicans run the House, they run the Senate, and they run the White House. So if there's a government shutdown, it's all them. But whatever solution has to be bipartisan, and we have to have our demands met. Well, then clearly the Republicans don't run everything. And the only thing stopping the government from being funded at midnight tonight are their demands. All right, so now let's flip to the White House yesterday and hear what they had to say right as they left the meeting in the Oval Office.
To the president, some of the consequences of what's happening in healthcare. And by his face and by the way he looked, I think he heard about them for the first time. The closing of rural hospitals. The fact that so many clinics are closing.
By the way, I'm going to stop here for a second, because you hear about this a lot and the media repeats it on cable news. You know, all of these rural hospitals and these clinics are closing, and it's because of Trump's budget cuts. You have to understand something. The big, beautiful bill that got put into effect several months ago, most of the funding having to do with the Affordable Care Act or rural hospitals hasn't even gone into effect yet. And rural hospitals have been closing for years now. And most of what's broken right now with healthcare, because they keep talking about healthcare and rural hospitals and clinics and all that stuff, most of what's broken is because the Democrats convinced the American people that the government had to take over huge sectors of the health insurance industry or empower the health insurance industry to sort of have carte blanche. That was called the Affordable Care Act, which, of course, if you look at the cost of healthcare from the moment in 2010 when the Affordable Care Act was passed into law, it made care incredibly unaffordable. It was called Obamacare. It's still called Obamacare, and it has ruined everything. And it's a reason why conservatives here in America are loath to allow for a government-run health system like you see in our neighbors in Canada or our neighbors in England, our friends in England, because as soon as the government is responsible for doctor's visits and MRIs and hospital stays and surgeries and all of the other things that they're responsible for in those two fine nations, as soon as the government's responsible for it, it means that every election and every budget battle and every spending battle and every debate always has to do with your personal health care. I don't know about you, but I don't trust people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to make decisions that are going to be good for my doctor's visits and my need for an MRI. I know Canada loves to brag about their health service, that, hey, it's all free. We don't have to pay for anything. Try getting an MRI in Canada. See if you can get it in less than a year. Just go ahead and ask. So they complain about the problems with our healthcare system right now, and all of it goes right back to when the government took larger control of our healthcare systems. And their solution now, because I thought they fixed everything in 2010. I thought Obamacare was going to fix it all, right? And now that they acknowledge that it's screwed up again, their only solution is, well, it's because Obamacare wasn't big enough. It didn't control enough. It didn't take over enough. And it's like every time they take more over and more over and more over, it becomes more expensive, less efficient. It's almost like the free market is a superior way to go. All right, so here he is. He's going to lie about the effects of the Affordable Care Act because Republicans have ruined it, which, of course, Republicans sadly haven't done a damn thing with the Affordable Care Act. But then he condescendingly suggests that Trump is ignorant of all these things.
And I don't know if he knew this before, but the fact that people will pay $4,000 more a year, $400 more a month, close to $5,000 more a year on their health care premiums if we don't do anything. And people don't know what to do. The average working family can't afford that. I told him how I met a mother who was crying to me because her daughter had cancer. And what has happened with health care, with what they have done, she's going to watch her daughter suffer and maybe die. And so he seemed to, for the first time, understand the magnitude of this crisis. And we hope he'll talk to the Republican leaders and tell them we need bipartisan input on.
There is no reason to believe anything that Chuck Schumer tells you, because we know he's a liar, and he's been a liar. In fact, a mother came to me crying. Oh, is it just like the pretend couple that you made up and you talk about for your entire political career that were fictional? Is it just like the raw hamburgers you put on a cold grill when you were celebrating Memorial Day? He's just a liar. And again, whatever changes that have been put in place with regard to Medicaid, it affects people who are not working willfully or who are in the country illegally. And it doesn't affect a mother and her child who has cancer. It just doesn't. Unless, of course, they're in the country illegally and they shouldn't be getting any health care coverage at all through the federal government. You know how I know that? Well, because this guy told me.
Federal law prohibits the expenditure of taxpayer dollars.
Thank you for healthcare. All right. So then Chuck Schumer gets ushered away, and it's time for some truth. It's time for the facts. It's time for Vice President J.D. Vance.
We just had a very frank conversation with the Senate and House Democratic leadership. Look, the principle at stake here is very simple. We have disagreements about tax policy, but you don't shut that government down. We have disagreements about healthcare policy, but you don't shut the government down. You don't use your policy disagreements as leverage to not pay our troops, to not have essential services of government actually function. You don't say the fact that you disagree about a particular tax provision is an excuse for shutting down the people's government and all the essential services that come along with it. If you look at what Chuck Schumer has said in the past consistently, it's whatever our disagreements are, let's negotiate with them. Let's talk about them. Let's figure out a bipartisan solution, but you don't shut the government down. In other words, you don't put a gun to the American people's head and say, unless you do exactly what Senate and House Democrats want you to do, we're going to shut down your government. That's exactly what they're proposing out there. Now, we have to remember, they're very frustrated. They say that they're very frustrated about the fact that this negotiation has not taken place until today. But if you look at the original thing they did with this negotiation, it was a $1.5 trillion spending package, basically saying to the American people, we want to give massive amounts of money, hundreds of billions of dollars to illegal aliens for their health care, while Americans are struggling to pay their health care bills. That was their initial foray into this negotiation. We thought it was absurd. We told them it was absurd, and now they come in here saying that if you don't give us everything that we want, we're going to shut down the government. We think that's preposterous. We think it's totally unacceptable, and we think the American people are going to suffer because these guys won't do the right thing. Now, I want to make one final point here. You will hear a lot from Senate Democrats, from House Democrats about the fact that American healthcare policy is broken. Well, we know that American healthcare policy is broken. We've been trying to fix it for the 8 months that we've been in office. But every single thing that they accuse about being broken about American healthcare is policy that Democrats have supported for the past decade. So if they want to talk about how to fix American healthcare policy, let's do it. The Speaker would love to do it. The Senate Majority Leader would love to do it. Let's work on it together. But let's do it in the context of an open government that's providing essential services to the American people. That's all that we're proposing to do. And the fact that they refuse to do that shows how unreasonable their position is. I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind. But
all right. And the question here is, who has more credibility? Who do you believe? Laying out the scare tactics that you just heard from Hakeem, Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer, laying out the facts, in my opinion, from J.D. Vance, the vice president. Also, just so you know, that's Minority Leader Thune, the tall dude to his left. That's Speaker Johnson, the short dude to his right. Just off camera is the director of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB Director Russ Vought. He's the secret sauce here. He's the secret weapon. He's the reason why I think this government shutdown will not happen tonight. I'll explain in a second. But first, more from Vice President here.
Frustrated about the fact that this negotiation has not taken place until today. But if you look at the original thing they did with this negotiation, it was a $1.5 trillion spending package, basically saying to the American people, we want to give massive amounts of money, hundreds of billions of dollars to illegal aliens for their health care, while Americans are struggling to pay their health care bills. That was their initial foray into this negotiation. We thought it was absurd. We told them it was absurd, and now they come in here saying that if you don't give us everything that we want, we're going to shut down the government. We think that's preposterous. We think it's totally unacceptable, and we think the American people are going to suffer because these guys won't do the right thing. Now, I want to make one final point here. You will hear a lot from Senate Democrats, from House Democrats about the fact that American healthcare policy is broken. Well, we know that American healthcare policy is broken. We've been trying to fix it for the 8 months that we've been in office, but every single thing that they accuse about being broken about American healthcare is policy the Democrats have supported for the past decade. So if they want to talk about how to fix American healthcare policy, let's do it. The Speaker would love to do it. The Senate Majority Leader would love to do it. Let's work on it together, but let's do it in the context of an open government that's providing essential services to the American people. That's all that we're proposing to do, and the fact that they refuse to do that shows how unreasonable their position is. I think we're headed to a shutdown because the Democrats won't do the right thing. I hope they change their mind, but we're going to see. I'll let the Speaker say a few words.
All right, that was a duplicate clip, as you know, and I'm guessing this is a duplicate clip too. I had 3 lined up here. Hang on.
One of the things I admired about the president, but frankly the entire team's approach during the conversation we just had with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries was, they have some crazy ideas. Giving taxpayer money to illegal aliens for healthcare, that's a crazy idea. Funding transgender surgeries in Peru, that's a crazy idea. But they had some ideas that I actually thought were reasonable, and they had some ideas that the president thought was reasonable. What's not reasonable is to hold those ideas as leverage and to shut down the government unless we give you everything that you want. There were multiple times where Leader Jeffries or Leader Schumer would say, you know what, we should be doing this. And the President of the United States would say, yeah, absolutely, let's have that conversation. But we're going to do it in the context of the people's government being open. We're not going to let you take the people's government hostage and then give you everything that you want. And that's really the state of the negotiation. Yeah, let's have a conversation. Let's have a negotiation. But we're not going to shut down the government because we won't give the Democrats everything that they want.
All right. So, and as I mentioned earlier, it's really up to you to decide who you believe and who you trust more based on the presentations you've just seen. I showed you Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. You just saw Vice President J.D. Vance. Go ahead. Tell us down below who you trust, who you believe, whose side you're on. If you're like the poll that the New York Times conducted, the overwhelming majority of you are on the side of the Vice President, the President, and the Republican leadership. Now, I mentioned Director Russ Vought. Listen to me. This is really careful that you understand. Really important that you understand what I'm saying here with regard to where these negotiations are. Russ Vought is the director of the Office of Management and Budget. Everything that happened under the DOGE cuts, they were really his cuts. DOGE recommended things, presented it to Russ Vought. Russ Vought recommended those cuts and the rescission package. That's how we got rid of the funding for NPR and PBS and funding for USAID and some of these other ridiculous things like transgender surgeries in Uganda and stuff like that. He's in charge of executing the actual expenditures that Congress authorizes and sends to the executive branch. The legislative branch passes the budget, allocates the money, authorizes the money. The director of OMB figures out how to get it done for the executive branch. Now, for every single so-called government shutdown that isn't really a government shutdown, for the past 30 years, the same thing has happened every single time. We hit the funding crisis at midnight at the end of the fiscal year, like we're about to do tonight on September 30th. Suddenly you wake up on October 1st, there's no authorized funding, and suddenly non-essential employees of the federal government go on furlough. Furlough is basically a deferred paid vacation. You don't come to work for however long it takes to get the government funded. When it is funded again, you come back to work and you'll get your back pay for the time off that you had. It's a scam. It's an absolute scam. The only people who end up suffering in a government shutdown are people who wanted services from the government and couldn't get it, like you wanted to go to the national park, or you had some meeting with somebody at EPA or at the Department of Agriculture, and the meeting had to be delayed because the person you were meeting with is staying at home and watching, Netflix instead of coming to work. And the other people who suffer because of the federal government shutdown are non-government workers who work with the federal government. I'm talking contractors, You have a deal with the government, or the government pays your business to work and work shoulder to shoulder with the federal government. This happens a lot in the defense industry. And you don't get furloughed. The money dries up. You have to stay at home and you don't get paid back pay. That's a dirty little secret here about how the government works. A lot of the work is done by contractors who don't even work with the federal government. They get screwed in a federal shutdown. And I feel bad for those people. It's not their fault. All right. Now, here's the difference this time around. Russ Vought, the director of Office of Management Budget, the bad guy from DOJ who did all the cuts, they painted him out to be a demon. The Democrats have said that this Trump administration under Russ Vought, they'll cut everything in the government if they have the opportunity to do it. But thank God we've got judges and we've got public service employee contracts that keep you from firing as many people as you want to fire. Well, guess what? That doesn't apply when there's a government shutdown. Starting tomorrow, if they don't fund the government, theoretically, everything's null and void on those contracts. There's no law that says you have to put these employees in furlough and then pay them back pay. The alternative, as Director Vought has suggested publicly, the alternative is to fire those employees, lay them off, and not hire them back. And he's threatened to do just that, or promised to do just that. And then when the government is funded, there's no law that says that every single one of those employees who have been laid off then get their job back. Here's what could happen. Democrats decide to play chicken with the Republicans and with Trump. They call their bluff. They don't agree to the continuing resolution. And as of tomorrow, we're in a government shutdown. Russ Vought starts laying off federal workers left and right, with a particular emphasis on people who joined the federal government during the Barack Obama years and the Joe Biden years, or maybe even going all the way back to the Clinton years. The permanent political class, the politicized left-wing bureaucracy who's been undermining our government and our Constitution for decades now. They all get sent their walking papers. Up until this point, they can't fire them because of the federal government regulations over employees and judges blocking their attempts to try to cut staff and cut workforce. Well, now, if there's no funding, they can fire as many people as they want. But here's the best thing. When the government gets funded again, the Trump administration is now in the business of hiring. And they're not obligated to hire back all the Obama, Clinton, Bidenites who were left-wing ideologues and used their job in the bureaucracy to further undermine the Trump administration or any other Republican who happens to be president. No. Now that we're hiring again, we'll hire MAGA people. We'll hire conservatives. We'll hire Republicans. And suddenly the entire face of the federal workforce has changed. And in the same way, the Obamaites and the Clintonites and the Biden bots were able to undermine our Constitution and change the way our government goes to work every day because they were ideologues instead of just professional federal government workers. And when a new president came in, they worked to undermine them in any way possible. Well, now you've got a whole new crew of people who are dedicated to Trump and the Republicans. In one fell swoop, they could change the face of the federal workforce and, frankly, change the future of the federal workforce for decades to come. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries know that. Will they risk it? And they can't claim to their constituents, well, we didn't see this coming. We had no idea they would do this, because they've just spent the last year saying that Trump will fire everybody if he has a chance and rehire them. And I mean, they've been threatening to do this. And now they're opening the door and giving them the opportunity to do it. And no judge can come in and stop them. Watch that space and see what happens. After the meeting, Donald Trump took to social media and put out what I believe is an artificial intelligence AI enhanced video of Schumer and Jeffries speaking to the media. I could be wrong, but I believe this has been altered.
There's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore. We have no voters left because of all of our woke trans bullshit. Not even black people want to vote for us anymore. Even Latinos hate us. So we need new voters. And if we give all these illegal aliens free health care, we might be able to get them on our side so they can vote for us. They can't even speak English, so they won't realize we're just a bunch of woke pieces of shit, you know, at least for a while until they learn English and they realize they hate us too.
All right. So again, like I said, I'm not an expert in these things. I could be wrong, but I don't remember Hakeem Jeffries wearing that hat. And I believe he was clean shaven. Chuck Schumer, for all I know, did in fact say exactly that. I mean, the guy's losing it. Last night on cable news, instead of talking about the actual realities of the budget crisis and the funding priorities and the continuing resolution and funding healthcare for illegal immigrants and all of the things that I just laid out to you in a thoughtful, intelligent, and analytical way, instead on cable news, they decided to talk about the video that Trump put out. And they love to change the subject. Now it's all about how racist Trump is.
Could you give us your reaction to that Trump posted video tonight?
It's a disgusting video, and we're going to continue to make clear bigotry will get you nowhere. We are fighting to protect the health care of the American people in the face of an unprecedented Republican assault.
Hold on. How is this bigotry? Just because they altered the image to make it look like he's got a big Mexican mustache and a sombrero? He's not even Mexican. How is that racist? He's like the Cheeto Bandito. Next, you're going to tell me the Cheeto Bandito was racist. Oh, I'm sorry, what? Oh, really? Yeah, they do. Oh, apparently the Cheeto Bandito was racist. All right, well. Anyway, Hakeem Jeffries now has a new talking point to play with, and he's fired up about it. And he's a political natural. Look at how smooth this is.
And Mr. President, the next time you have something to say about me, don't cop out through a racist and fake AI video. When I'm back in the Oval Office, say it to my face. Say it to my face.
That'll show him. They are so cooked. That's the best they got. That's the best I got. What about the looming government shutdown? Did you see the AI video with the mustache and the sombrero? Say it to my face. How exactly does one say that to your face? All right, Hakeem, you wanted me to say it to your face? Stephen Miller, can you come in here? Bring the sombrero. Bring the fake mustache. Yeah, no. He said to say it to his face, so we got to put it on him. Absolutely. Bring it in. We got it for you, Hakeem. Don't worry. We're going to put it on you so that you can go see the meet. Wait, is that not what you meant? Well, what did you mean? What do you mean, say it to my face? All right. Well, you're up to speed now on the looming funding crisis for the federal government. Midnight tonight is when everything happens. I think they're going to reach a continuing resolution agreement, partly because of the polls showing that everyone's blaming the Democrats for it, partly because they have no message, because they would have to go on television and explain how they need $1.5 trillion that will end up going to pay illegal immigrants for their health care instead of actually helping you with your cost of health care. And finally, because Russ Vought is ready to go with the hatchet. You want to call his bluff? Go ahead. Let's see what happens. Either way, we'll talk about it on this show. Make sure you stay tuned. I regret to inform you that Don Lemon, formerly of CNN and now of some Substack podcast, is in fact a racist. Don Lemon hates white people. Here's his latest episode. And as you listen to what he has to say about white men in particular, I want you to just imagine what the reaction would be if any podcaster or streamer who looks like me used these exact words, but instead of saying white people, I said any other race. What would the reaction be? Here's Don Lemon.
Men who look like you, men who vote like you, and men who sound like you. White men, something is broken. Something is cracked deep inside when so many of you believe the answer to fear, to loss, to change is violence. Are you listening to me? I hope I'm saying it loud enough for the people in the back.
Wow, that's some compelling content there. He's got quite a way with his audience. Okay, so white people, there's something broken. He actually doubled down and went further. Watch.
Wake up, white men. What the fuck is wrong with you? But you're too dumb to even realize that because you're lazy and sitting in front of a computer or a phone and you're just eating it up. Oh, my God, look at what they're doing. All of a sudden, my heritage is going to be over. That I want to live in a country where their white kids go to white schools and white people marry each other. What is wrong with that? I want to grow up in the country that my great-grandfather grew up in. That country doesn't exist anymore, asshole. Wake up, white men. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Did you do the little thought experiment? Did you imagine it was a podcaster who looks like me or a streamer who looks like me, and I changed the race from white men to any other race out there? What would happen? What would the reaction be? What would our sponsors do? How is he able to do this? Empowered to do this? Celebrated for doing this? Honestly, I think the most disconcerting and disturbing part of this entire episode is the comments of support from his viewers and supporters and members. There's an audience for this. It's small, it's hateful, but it's there. Don Lemon believes white people, and he kept saying white men, not some white men, not certain white men, white men. White men have something wrong with them. White men are basically evil. White men suck. By the way, I don't know if you knew this about Don Lemon, but when he's done with his show at the end of a long, hard day, and he goes home to the loving arms of his spouse, it's this guy. Is he acting out some sort of, passive aggressive problems that he's having with his own gay relationship because he has to go home to a white man? Is he being abusive to Don or something? Is this guy like some horrible man, and instead of confronting him about how racist and evil he is, he's decided to just act out and say that all white men are like that? Don, show us on the doll where this guy has hurt you. We want to help you through this. Don Lemon has decided that white men suck. And then when he goes home, well, I mean, you can finish that joke yourself. When Don Lemon wasn't spewing his own racist hatred, he decided to bring on Ilhan Omar to do the same. Here's what she had to say. Button down now and get ready. It's not good.
I have nothing to apologize for. It is a tragedy that Charlie Kirk was killed in that way. I feel for his widow and his children. They will have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But there is no legacy to honor. It was a legacy filled with bigotry, hatred, and white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And as a Black woman and as a Muslim in this country, I refuse to join the chorus that changes the history of what is on the record from this man. And so, Nancy Mace, the president, like whatever, these crazy people can do whatever they want to do. Yeah. But I am not going to be bullied into complacency, into, dishonoring who I am and what I stand for just to, make them feel comfortable. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
I have nothing to... Don Lemon listening to all of that and just saying, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Ilhan Omar worrying about being bullied is pretty rich, considering that's her entire MO and business model is to bully others, usually over race or ethnicity or religion or politics or what have you, but that's what she does. But let's be clear here. Ilhan Omar is who she is. I don't expect her to change. But she's been saying this about Charlie Kirk for a week now. She's been invited on show after show after show after show. On the same day as Charlie Kirk's memorial this past Sunday, Dana Bash of CNN deliberately booked her on her show to say this about Charlie Kirk on that day. Everyone knows what Ilhan Omar thinks about Charlie Kirk. Everyone knows what Ilhan Omar feels about Charlie Kirk, and what she thinks and feels about those of us who know Charlie Kirk, or worked with Charlie Kirk, or support Charlie Kirk, or feel grieving about Charlie Kirk. We know what Ilhan Omar has to say. Here it is, 3 weeks later now, and Don Lemon decides, you know what we need to do? We need to get Ilhan Omar on the show. We need to make sure that our podcast has Ilhan Omar, and then I'll ask her a question about Charlie Kirk and whether she should apologize for what she said, because we can just keep this storyline going even further, and we'll give more attention to Ilhan Omar so that she can repeat again and again and again the same hateful garbage about Charlie Kirk. That was a programming choice from Don Lemon and the whole team over there at the Don Lemon Show. But Don Lemon is worried about you white man, and how hateful and incendiary and divisive you are, while he picks up the phone and books Ilhan Omar for another great segment. I wish I could say that this was just an outlier and it's Don Lemon and he's pathetic and he doesn't matter and he has no impact and he has no influence, and all of those things are true. But while this was happening on his lamentable show, over there at the New York Times, which I think might have more impact, Ezra Klein hosted this guy, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who has not seen a racial division that he hasn't split wide open and fomented. He hasn't seen a bonfire with regard to race that he hasn't thrown gasoline on. And so, of course, Ezra Klein wanted to know what Ta-Nehisi Coates thought about race in America today, and, of course, Charlie Kirk.
I don't take any joy in saying this, but we sometimes soothe ourselves by pointing out that love, acceptance, warmth, that these are powerful forces. I believe they are. I also believe hate is a powerful force. I believe it's a powerful, powerful unifying force. And I think Charlie Kirk was a hate monger. You know, I really need to say this over and over again. I have a politic that rejects violence, that rejects political violence. I take no joy in the killing of anyone, no matter what they said. But if you ask me what the truth of his life was, you know, and the truth of his public life, I would have to tell you it's hate. I would tell you, I'd have to tell you it is the usage of hate and the harnessing of hate towards political ends.
It's pronounced ask. Say it with me. Ask. An axe is a noun. That's a tool used to chop down a tree or to kill people if you're in one of the Friday 13th horror movies. That's an axe. I think what you're trying to say is ask. Ask. The S comes before the K. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That's the New York Times. That's the New York Times deciding to elevate this hate monger's opinion about Charlie Kirk up onto their brand and up onto their fine reputation. I'm sorry, did he say that he has a politic that doesn't support violence? Because I remember the George Floyd riots that he was, you know, almost literally fanning the flames of as buildings were burning in this country. He might as well have lit the fuse on the Molotov cocktails that were thrown into business owners, black business owners, businesses in downtown St. Louis and Los Angeles and Detroit and Baltimore and Washington, D.C. and any other city in a predominantly black neighborhood, that this guy was just fine screaming no justice, no peace as those cities were burning down. But he has a politic of no violence ever. Yeah, sure. A friend of this program, Mark Halperin, who we had on a week ago for a long-form interview, he responded to Ta-Nehisi Coates yesterday in real time. He appeared on Emily Jasinski's After Party podcast, and she played the clip you just saw. Halperin had not seen it. And when asked to respond to it, I think he speaks for a lot of us here. I'll let him take it.
I'd like to extend the presumption of grace to people. And, you know, that guy was not speaking on teleprompter. He was speaking off the top of his head. So maybe he regrets saying what he said, but fuck him. Because this man was not a hater. Just manifestly not. And there's so much evidence on the public record. You didn't have to know him personally to know that he wasn't a hater. Disagree with him. Charlie said some things I didn't disagree with. He said some things I didn't particularly fancy, but he was not a hater. And he's got a widow and 2 young kids and so many friends who loved him. And this guy's on the national town square talking bullshit about someone he didn't know and saying really hurtful things. And the reason it matters, besides that it reflects that the New York Times will give a microphone to someone so ignorant, is because this is what's wrong with the desire for people to make money and get acclaim off of saying false negative things about people they don't know.
Yeah, and I couldn't have said it better myself, and that's why Mark Halperin is, in fact, a friend of this program. Let me just say, we criticize Democrats all the time here. And by the way, Mark, I don't know how he registers politically, but I can tell you he and I do not agree on a lot of politics. But Mark Halperin at least shows some sense of decency here at this moment and recognizes a hate-mongering charlatan when he sees one, and that's Ta-Nehisi Coates. And Ezra Klein, who, by the way, has gotten a lot of attention lately for the New York Times for his podcast because he's trying to sort of resurrect the dead body that is liberal Democrats in this country by trying to speak sense and trying to fix them. No, I'm sorry. The fact that he had Ta-Nehisi Coates there and he thoughtfully nodded along with this kind of despicable content tells you that no, it can't be fixed. And if it is fixed, it's certainly not Ezra Klein who's going to be doing the fixing. In fact, let me show you this moment. As if hating and dividing us over race wasn't enough, Ezra Klein also had plenty to say with Ta-Nehisi Coates about the trans issue. You're going to love this. Take a look.
Right. A majority of the country believes things about trans people, about what policy should be towards trans people, about what language is acceptable to trans people, that like we would see as fundamentally and morally wrong.
Right.
And what politically, not in a column or something, but politically, should our relationship with those people be? Do we win them over? Do we compromise with them? Like, this feels like a very salient question. The Republican Party is going to make sure this is a relentlessly salient question.
Right.
So
I agree with that.
Where does...
By the way, I just got to jump in here. When he says the Republican Party is going to make sure that this is a salient question, maybe I wish the Republican Party was smart enough to do that. But I can tell you that just normies here, not speaking for the party, not running for office, but I do want to know from every single person running for office the answer to a couple of simple questions. Can a man get pregnant? Can a man change their sex and suddenly become a woman? Should anyone born with male parts be allowed to get changed and take off their clothes in front of an 11-year-old girl against her consent? Should she be forced to use public spaces and get undressed in front of a biological man without her consent? Yes. Yes, Ezra. Those are salient questions. You're going to have an answer to them. But instead of actually grappling with the reality of those questions and the fact that 80% of America, if not more, finds the issue reprehensible and disgusting and completely unsafe for our daughters, instead of facing that, this is their solution.
Does the approach leave us, right? Where do we go on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Look, I think a couple things. I think, again, look, my tradition is the only thing I have a reference point for, so I'm sorry to keep going back to this. But when I look at the times that we have lost, if I think specifically about the Black tradition, for instance, it's hard for me to say politically they did something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, Reconstruction falls. What was the thing that should have been done?
Right.
He goes on to give a nonsensical answer and basically tries to make it a racial issue. But the fact that Ezra Klein even asked that question, the fact that Ezra Klein even asked the question and the sole basis and focus of the question is conservatives won't adopt our thought police and language police by calling biological men trans women. right? And what do we do about that? Well, watch again how he frames the question.
A majority of the country believes things about trans people, about what policy should be towards trans people, about what language is acceptable to trans people, that like we would see as fundamentally and morally wrong.
Right.
And what politically, not in a column or something, but politically, should our relationship with those people be?
What should our relationship with those people, the majority of our country, that he concedes it's the majority of the country, who won't accept their politics, their activism, their policies, and even the language when it comes to, no, I'm sorry, he and she means something. Truth matters. Male and female are defined biologically and genetically. And there's no skirting that. And you may have plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery and radical alterations through pharmaceuticals and through chopping things off or adding things in to make you appear to be something other than you were born. But that doesn't change the fundamental truth of how you were born and how you still are biologically made up. And Ezra Clyde's, but so you add all of this again between the race issue and the sex issue and the truth issue here. There is no reaching an agreement when you're dealing with people who just want to throw hate at you for believing fundamental truths. And speaking of hate, let's round this segment out with Joy Reid because she just won't go away.
Is that if you go back before the 20th century, there were no income taxes, there were no regulations on business. You could earn as much money as you want, leave 100% of it to your children with no taxes. Right. That's the world they want back. And to get it back, they need society to change. They need people to be less modern. They need people to want fewer things.
Wait. I think we can work with this. In fact, I'm thinking I'm seeing an ad for 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential election. This is Joy Reid painting this dystopian horror picture of what life would be like if we had just a few more years fundamentally changing the American system of government. What would that look like?
Is that if you go back before the 20th century, there were no income taxes, there were no regulations on business. You could earn as much money as you want, leave 100% of it to your children with no taxes. Right. That's the world they want back. And to
my name's JD Vance, and I approve this message. Are you kidding me? She's actually telling you that world that she just painted is problematic and something that they have to resist. Just so you all know, I think the majority of Americans would be happy with that world. No income taxes, make as much money as you want, leave all of it to your children. And no, if not at least reduced, regulations on governments. I believe at some point in this segment, I said that it's very hard to reach agreement with these people on the left. I think we have found the place of agreement. You are right, Joy Reid. That is, in fact, the world we want to go back to. And little by little, we're getting there. And that's a wonderful thing, actually. It'll be wonderful for you. Wonderful for everyone. Okay, we have agreement. And by the way, it speaks volumes that is her idea of a nightmare. Great. At least we know where we all stand and we're not lying about it anymore. Let's just all get on board and have that conversation. I'm confident with how it'll work out. All right, let's get to your super chats now that have been rolling in. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, look at wasn't watching the clock. We've got a long show. And we have one more segment, by the way. We're going to interview a candidate for governor in California that has some solutions to the problems out there that seem insurmountable. So we'll get to that in a sec. First, let's do your private chats. We'll start with Rumble, $5 from Casperius over there. Oh, I'm sorry, but we can't afford to keep you non-essential employees around during the shutdown. You're fired. Yep, that's exactly what they're promising to do. Let's see if the Democrats think they're bluffing or not. Thank you, Casperius, for that $5 super chat. What else we got there, Kev? Stumbleboots with the $2 super chat. You're cool. Even when I'm in Montreal, you're cool. Thank you, Stumbleboots. Jeff Puy Sr., Dupuy Sr. with $2 super chat. These standards will save lives of our children. The military standards. Absolutely, they will. They will. And it's been a long time coming. Richard Murray with a $10 super chat. John Pinette came back from Canada raving about the beaver tails. That might be a different part of Canada than I'm in. But you know what? Kurt Schlichter's in town with me. And I promise you, tonight after dinner, we're going to go wandering around town. We're going to go hunt for some beaver tail. Ball State alum with the $10 super chat. Hey, Chuckles and Hakeem, how about no? I don't do a good Dr. Evil voice, but I hope that I got close enough. Thank you, Jeff. Max Meeks with a $2 super chat. The government needs a flea bath. Yeah, that's exactly what could happen with this shutdown. It could be a reckoning, actually, for the bloat. Richard Murray with a $10 super chat. At the start, Hegseth should have held up an M4 and said, "Gentlemen, this is a rifle." That would have been hilarious, actually. And I don't think half the room would have understood. Thanks, Richard. Colleen Thompson with a $5 super chat. Then make some layoffs for the Dems' pet bureaucracies. There are far too many employees if we're constantly being threatened with shutdowns. I agree. I mean, you heard about the stat. 92% of the EPA is non-essential. That's a good place to start with these layoffs. Not furloughs, layoffs. God knows the rest of us working in the private sector in the real world have had to deal with just that. Dennis Harmon with a $25 super chat. Muchas gracias, Dennis. Seriously, the Dems want $1.5 trillion of our tax dollars for healthcare for illegal aliens. I don't think so. Shut the government down. Yep, it will get shut down and will be absolutely blamed on the Democrats because of their posturing here. Unless, of course, Donald Trump gets blamed because he tweeted out a doctored video of Hakeem Jeffries wearing a sombrero. That could be the game changer. Let's see. Thank you, Dennis. Richard Murray with a $5 super chat starting tomorrow. I'm going to be working days for a while, so I had to go into a few super chats today. Richard, thank you, and we will miss you. Hopefully you'll watch us on demand. We'll be looking for your comments there. Thank you for your support, man. I appreciate it. Rick Cassidy with a $1.99 super chat. Riff, shut it down. Thank you, Democrats. Enough said. Drop the mic. Patrick with £5 over there in the UK. Is the cancer sufferer Schumer was lying about the daughter of Joe and Eileen Bailey, the couple Schumer made up for years before getting caught out. Exactly. I believe both of those stories with the same level of alacrity. I don't think I used alacrity properly there. Thank you for that super chat. Thank you all for watching. All right, let's get right to our final segment. Let's go. Viewers of this program know that I care deeply about the state of California. I spent most of my life there. I raised my children there, but all Americans should care about California. It's got our largest population, and California has always represented sort of the American dream. I know they call it the Golden State and the California dream, but the California dream is the American dream. How many stories have we seen about people going to that amazing state with nothing in their pocket and reaching their fullest potential? Because California has a history of encouraging entrepreneurship and visionaries to be able to, well, make miracles happen. That's what California has always represented. In the last couple of decades, it's been the opposite. It's horrible, and it needs to be changed. People always ask me, when will we get a good governor back in California again? When will a Republican win again? And I always say the same thing. When it gets so bad, the Californians recognize that they have to make a change. This could be the year it finally happens. One of the candidates who wants to be governor of California joins us right now. He is Leo Zacky, and anyone who knows California knows the name Zacky. I think I used to buy your turkeys for Thanksgiving, Mr. Zacky. Thanks for joining us. Zacky Farms. Everyone loves Zacky Farms.
That's right. And I'm sure you did. I mean, we've been on everybody's Thanksgiving dinner plate. We've been in your hot dog buns. We've been on your, just your dinner plate or wherever at any restaurant. We were huge here in California. In fact, the largest poultry producers on the West Coast.
Well, and in fact, I think your experience with your business, with your family business that I believe you handed down for multiple generations, and what ended up happening with the regulations in California and just the economic downturn, I think it's a great allegory to what's broken. I think that that's what makes your perspective on how to fix California resonate that much more. So why don't you talk us through, from your perspective, what's wrong with California?
Well, where do you begin? I mean, the real problem starts obviously at leadership, and having been in that business background, I mean, leadership is really where it all starts. If you don't have people that are competent and caring and really just want to do the right thing in those positions, then everybody else beneath them are going to take note and say, well, they're not showing up on time. They're not putting their best foot forward. They're taking advantage of the system. So can I. So that brings all the problems that come with it. But we have drought and homelessness and crime and corruption. Our education's in the toilet. But people in California know what the problems are. They just don't know what the solutions are. And that's the difference between me and everybody else in this race, is that I actually have common sense solutions for everybody in California to turn those problems into net revenue generators.
Well, let's talk through some of the problems. I think one of the most shining examples of what's been broken and failed policies repeated over and over again that just lead to more of the same problem is the homelessness crisis. Gavin Newsom and his party, they've been promising the solution to this with more money, more taxes, more plans, more building, more state-run solutions, and ultimately it just keeps getting worse and worse. How would you approach this problem?
Yeah, Gavin's been promising changes to homeless and fixing the homeless problem since he was in San Francisco as their mayor, even city council. My solution is simple. It's I call it homeless to home, where we actually enforce our vagrancy laws and we focus instead on housing first, on actual treatment, because it's a mental health crisis compounded by a drug epidemic, exacerbated by a failed education system. So enforcing our vagrancy laws and removing them from the public spaces that they're occupying, it is the best thing that we can do. But we have to get them into a program that's going to help them. And so don't send them to jail, send them to a functional, constructive rehab where they can get the help. So mental health treatment and medical care and drug rehab treatment. And then while they're undergoing the treatment, they can receive a job skill while they're learning all this stuff and getting the help they need. So they'll have a small modular tiny home. I found a company that produces them for $2,000 a unit. We can pay it off at $75 a month for 27 months. Wow. And so they'll earn a living wage while they do the work while getting the treatment. And we don't have to spend tens of millions of dollars building brick and mortar facilities, because we have probably 250,000 homeless here in the state of California. So they learn a job skill, and it'll be in things like construction, where they'll help us build the water infrastructure that we need for my water abundance project. They'll do sanitation, cleaning up our public spaces, our tourist traps like Hollywood Boulevard and the Wharf in San Francisco, and even just our highways in general. They'll do agriculture work, raising crops, which we can then turn around and sell to offset these expenses. Whether it's table grades that you can sell to places like Erewhon or Whole Foods as an organic feel-good product, or just even as feedlot or exporting it. And then you have them doing basic wildlife management and forestry, where we can have them clear our underbrush out, which will save us billions of dollars on the balance sheet elsewhere, so we don't have to fight these awful fires that are always out of control. So they get their mental health under control, their drug habit under control, they get money in the bank, they get I said, the job skill, and then they're eligible.
And they actually do something to contribute to the state that is doing all of this for them and providing them. They're doing functions and work that needs to get done. See,
correct.
And by the way, Mr. Zacky, you begin with enforce our criminal vagrancy laws. I mean, that's such a basic thing that has been ignored in these jurisdictions across the state. And the way you lay it out, it seems to make logical sense. And there are other places. I remember city of New York, Rudy Giuliani sort of put a very similar plan in place there, and they did solve the problem in the 90s in New York. So it's not like these ideas that you just laid out haven't been tried. So what's the resistance? What's in it for Democrats? What's in it for Gavin Newsom to continue these failed policies?
You know, I don't really understand. I think they just need the chaos, order out of chaos in a sort of a way, right? You know, if they fix the problems, right, then all the bureaucrats and all the other people that, I guess, sustain their existence off of the corruption aren't there. How can they spend $25 billion on homelessness if there isn't a homeless crisis? And there's all these appointed positions that just go totally unchecked. There's no checks and balances in these things.
Right.
And we wonder where all this money goes when we wind up with 50% more homeless after the fact.
And yet people are literally getting rich off of this crisis. See, I wanted to lead with that issue, Leo Zacky, because I love sort of grabbing our viewers and our listeners' attention by letting them know, here's a candidate who can look at what appears to be an insurmountable problem in the state of California. And here's the solution, A, B, C, D, E, and this is how you get it done. Let's take a half step back now and sort of formally introduce you to everybody. You're the vice president of Zacky Farms, former board member of the California Poultry Federation, and co-owner, by the way, of an organization called Asteria. This is plastic waste conversion, which sounds cutting edge and something that I really want to hear more about. Talk to me a little bit about your experience in the business world, being a Californian your entire life, and how all of that is going to apply to your candidacy. What is it you're bringing to the table that no other candidate can bring?
Well, sure. I mean, with Zacky Farms, I've spent my life in the agriculture industry. I mean, agriculture is the #1 source of revenue for the state of California. Sorry, Hollywood, and sorry, big tech. That's what it is.
Sorry, Mickey Mouse. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big driver of industry in California in revenue. And I was a board member for the California Poultry Federation. So I spent a decade doing that, going to DC, going to Sacramento, meeting with our elected officials, meeting with the bureaucrats, senators, congressmen, FDA, USDA, EPA, all that. And I quickly learned that they're very stupid and they don't care about you or your business or your family, but they really love being wined and dined. So that is a big issue. And I know how to deal with them and I know what the problem is, and we need to totally change that. But also having been in the restaurant business as well, my family had an Italian restaurant, and I know all the struggles and difficulties of that, dealing with commercial real estate, also startups, being involved in startups and environmental tech companies like you mentioned with Astera, and also Creative Integration Labs, where we do protein replication. So having these understanding of all these different types of industries that are would thrive certainly here in California, make a big difference. Yeah. I mean, you have to know how to run a business, because California has now become, government in general has become a service-based industry. And the sad reality is that our only revenue stream comes from taxation. So we have to divest and diversify our portfolio here in California to achieve new sources of revenue so we can bring taxes way down. Hopefully, I'd love to eliminate them. I mean, that's what this country was founded on, was no taxation without representation. So I would love for us to get to that point, and I have detailed plans to get us there, because anything you want to do in business, like some sort of idea you have, some venture, it has to have a means of covering its fees. And that's exactly what I've developed here.
As you know, a lot of Californians over the last several years have left the Golden State. They've gone to other places. A lot of them go to Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. And I've got friends who lived in California their whole lives. They now live in one of those 3 states, and those states have 0 income taxes, Leo Zacky. And they're like, why can't California do this? How is it possible that Florida, with just a diverse population, not quite as big a population, but a pretty big population, with all the state resources and obligations that they have, somehow they're able to get it done with 0 income taxes? Connect these dots for us, because I don't understand why California has gone so far in the other direction with the highest taxes in the country.
Well, it's because we've become a nanny state here in California. It's all these safety nets that are in place. And I wouldn't necessarily call them all safety nets. I mean, yes, I do believe that we should have some base level of help for our citizens.
Sure, for actual people who are living in poverty, who really need desperate help. Sure.
Right. But when you spend over $12 billion a year on illegal immigrants, not illegal aliens, that's what they are. They're here illegally as aliens.
Yeah.
That's a big problem right there. And then all the other just fluff and waste and all this bureaucratic mess. I mean, California has its own EPA. That's the Cal EPA, that's completely separate from the federal EPA. And so it's all this like redundancy that's unnecessary that is hurting the state. And it's the lack of actually properly spending. But it's more than that. It's also the reactionary factor of our government. There's never a proactive measure that's put in place to actually plan for the future. They always say we're in this perpetual state of drought. Well, you could have gone to Mammoth Mountain this year and still boarded into July. And last year you could have done it into August. But we don't build the infrastructure to harness those things. We focus on waste, on green energy nonsense that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And when you have tried and true, I mean, our utility costs are high. Industry doesn't want to be here. They flee. Think about it. Chevron's packed up and left. Oracle packed up and left. Tesla left. 99-cent stores have gone out of business. My family went out of business. In-N-Out Burger left. These are huge employers. And Hollywood's dying, if not almost completely dead. And we have to revitalize Hollywood with tax credits to get them back here, but also just bring the taxes down.
See, Gavin Newsom will hear you say that, and he'll slick back his hair and he'll put on that big grin and say, we have the 5th largest economy in the world. Nothing's wrong here. No one's leaving here. And if people leave, well, we've got new industries coming in. Is he just whistling past the graveyard with that?
Of course. I mean, it's always just lies from them. And especially Gavin, my God, he's the most untrustworthy person out there. He's got a noticeable lack for a trail of destruction everywhere he's been, from starting out in San Francisco to now the wave of destruction he's left across the entire state of California.
Let's talk about a real world situation that all of America, all of the world witnessed earlier this year, and that was the devastating fires in Southern California. The Pacific Palisades basically destroyed. Most of Altadena also. Altadena doesn't get as much attention because it's more of a middle-class neighborhood, upper middle-class neighborhood, but absolutely devastating. I had friends and family who lived there. The fires were there. First of all, number one, the cause of the fires and the fact that there was no water in the reservoir in the Palisades to be able to mitigate and fight those fires, lack of planning there. But secondly, Leo Zacky, you look at the Palisades right now, I don't think one home has even begun reconstruction 9 months later. So talk about that as a problem that is demanding a solution.
Larry, you're right. I mean, it's really a shame that Altadena doesn't get any attention. And I have a friend, Ken Charles. He's a fantastic musician, had a home business totally wiped out in Altadena. I have friends who've lost multiple properties in the Palisades fire, and I live right by there. I lost power during this whole thing, and it's scary. I've had to go through too many of these fires here in the Sepulveda Pass. It breaks my heart that people have lost their homes like this. There are a couple of homes that are being rebuilt where you're starting to see the framing go up. But I mean, I'm talking about a handful over when you're talking about 10,000 properties that have been destroyed. And I mean, I can get in the car and drive 5 minutes and I'm already in that destructed fire zone. Yeah. It's heartbreaking. I grew up hanging out there. The permitting process, the CEQA nonsense, the Coastal Commission, the state getting in the way. I mean, I've heard horror stories of people being charged $250,000 just to clear their lots.
Leo, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but I lived in LA in the 90s for the Northridge quake. And
I remember that one, yeah.
Governor Wilson and Mayor Reardon, it was a unicorn moment where you had a Republican in Sacramento and in the mayor's office in LA. They suspended most of the permitting processes, the no bid contracts, all that stuff. They gave incentives. We had downed expressways, overpasses like the 10 over by Fairfax Boulevard. They had that repaired in 30 days after the earthquake.
Well, they had incentives. The 118 overpass collapsed, the 14 interchange collapsed. And so what they did is they went out to these companies and said, we need to get this working. And so they said, you have 120 days to get it operational. And for every day you complete it early, there's a financial incentive there.
Brilliant.
Well, they got them up and running in less than 90 days. But that's how you get it done. You have to have the ability to bring in outside people to get these bids, to do the work, and that competition breeds excellence. You see that in getting better contracts for infrastructure building. You see that with education. You see that with everything across the board. Competition breeds excellence, and that's exactly what we don't have going on in California.
All right, listen, I love talking about policy all the time and solving the problems and getting solutions, and obviously you can speak to those things. But we got to talk about the real politics of this. Most people think that California is done in terms of actually having any kind of political competition. It's a one-party state, one-party rule, and anyone other than the next anointed Democrat doesn't have a chance. So what is your political strategy here in actually bringing victory?
Well, it's about showing people a way forward and a plan forward. As I mentioned earlier, everybody knows what's wrong with the state. And it's just about how do we get out of this mess. And so I'm not here to be the Republican governor for exclusively Republicans. I'm here to be the governor for all Californians so that we can get the legislature working together. I want to bridge the gap with the legislature when I'm elected and actually work together, because we have to remember that whatever decisions get made there affect all of us. This is about Team California. So we need to have real solutions, and that's what I have. Like for example, like the water. That's the biggest issue we have in the state.
Yeah, you mentioned Mammoth and the snow camp and everything. But let's talk about the drought, because it's frustrating when you see these record storms and mudslides and all of this rain, and then you find out that nothing was done to capture that rain and save it for a non-rainy day when the drought comes.
Right. I mean, our population's doubled in the last 50 years, but we haven't built any significant water infrastructure. And we have all this wonderful mountains of the Sierra Nevadas, these canyons and ravines, but we're not damming them up. We don't have brand new reservoirs throughout the state to capture the rainwater. In fact, Newsom is destroying dams on the Klamath River. We lose hydroelectric generation. We lose water storage. These are big deals. And then we dump billions of gallons into the ocean for the Sacramento River smelt, which, by the way, is exclusively now being raised in captivity at UC Davis and released. Can't even find it measurably in the wild. They are cutting our farmers off from water, and 7,000 farmers are now recently going without water in Northern California, where some of them have pear trees that are 110 years old. They're going to die. They don't understand how the agriculture works. It's not a switch. You don't just turn it on, turn it off. It's not a factory like that. So build reservoirs, capture the snowpack, capture the rainwater, build the dams, dam up our concreted rivers in our metropolitan areas. It's water storage we're not utilizing properly. Just stagger a bunch of dams in there, build purification plants, but then get our desal going and power them with small modular nuclear reactors. So we have an abundance of water, an abundance of energy. They become very cheap. Then farmers have more access to that. I mean, our farmers in the Central Valley are limited to 1.65 cubic feet per acre. You need 2.25 cubic feet for citrus. You need 4.5 cubic feet for almonds. And then when we have this abundance, we can turn around and export the water by auctioning off the Colorado River shed for profit to our neighbors like Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. So we can bring money in that way because the Colorado River runs all through those states.
You'd actually be a
into
supplier
Mexico.
of water instead of being desperately in drought mode.
Absolutely. I mean, it's resource mismanagement here. That's what causes the fires. When you don't clear out the invasive bark beetle, when you don't manage your forests, those cause devastating fires. That's billions of dollars there. We have oil that we can extract here in California that can generate $80 billion a year in revenue, create over 100,000 permanent real jobs, not fake government. Let's fudge the numbers jobs. There's so many reasons and ways that we can bring money into the state.
All right,
and I've got them. I've figured it out.
Let's turn to the other major crisis in California. There's a lot of them, but I think the other one is the law and order issue and the fact that criminals are allowed to, basically shoplift, break the law. They're right back on the streets if the police are even motivated to catch them, but they know there's a revolving door there with lack of prosecutions and with all of the policies that have emptied the jails and put in so-called criminal justice reform in place. How much of that, as governor, can you reverse and actually bring back a regular sense of law and order so that people feel safe in the streets and small business owners can be protected from the devastation of the theft and robbery and crime that they've had to deal with? Does the governor have enough power and influence to be able to turn that ship around?
Yeah, and the one thing that the sheriffs tell me constantly is that Gavin Newsom never meets with them, doesn't want to work with them. And I want to empower the sheriffs to actually go and make sure that they can get law and order in place. But really the best way, Larry, to stop crime is to have a strong economy. And on top of that, a good education system. Because if you have a bunch of people that are coming out of school, a bunch of kids graduating from high school or whatever, and they don't have skills, then it's hard for them to find employment. But it's even more so difficult when you disincentivize businesses from even being able to set up shop here in California and you're driving them out. So if you don't have a place where people can get employment, and then if they were eligible for or able to get employment, they're not eligible because of their education, that's a problem. But I want the police to have the tools to go and enforce the law, but make sure that when they actually get the criminals, that they keep them in jail. But more importantly, it's also the judges. The judges are a big issue. So if how the police officers are really not protected when they go and they can get sued by the people that they arrest, which is, I think, a big problem.
Yeah.
That if you took those immunity protections away from judges when it comes to releasing criminals, that would be a whole nother thing. And Gavin Newsom has been redefining what a violent offense is. Did you know that in California, that if you rape somebody while they're sober, that's a violent crime. But if you rape them while they're drugged and passed out, it's no longer a violent offense. And they're releasing prisoners like that. They're shutting down their prisons. That's unacceptable.
Absolutely.
I think we need to put prisoners to work. They need to be doing something constructive instead of just enjoying 3 hots in a cot in the best workout session of their life. They need to really I want to put them to work and helping the homeless population plan that I have and help getting them to work, but they'll just earn prison wages as opposed to living wages.
Yeah, and clean up all of the garbage that have been left by the criminal vagrants in Hollywood and Los Angeles. All of the
You have to have deterrence.
Despicable. Leo Zacky, there's so much to uncover in California. It's a big state with a lot of big problems, and I think we scratched the surface on a lot of them. I'm going to go to your website. I see it on your sign there, leozacky.com. I'm already checked it out earlier. You've got a lot of policy ideas, a lot of it, and also you can sign up for a newsletter so you can keep getting people alerts, right?
Of course, yeah. And then, I mean, social media is a great place to follow me, at Leo S. Zacky on Instagram and X and TikTok.
Excellent.
You know, those are the best places to get a hold of me. You can always DM me on there. So I'm very reachable. I'm not above anybody. I don't need this job. I'm a regular guy. I play ice hockey. I snowboard. I got a lot of friends.
Hold on.
Enjoy
Ice
life.
hockey in California? Wow.
You better believe it. Go Kings, go.
Oh, I know. Trust me. I keep making fun of Canada, actually. I'm in Montreal right now, and it'll never not be funny that Las Vegas has won a Stanley Cup more recently than anyone in Canada. It's brilliant. All right, leozacky.com. Anyone who's watching or listening, you need to care about California. I know you do. And by the way, we have a huge viewership in California on our video platforms. Go to that website, get more information about Leo Zacky. Now is the time to start building momentum for next year's election, because there's got to be solutions down the road. We cannot write off California. It's too good a state not to be fixed. We got to keep trying. Leo Zacky, let's have this be the beginning of some more conversations, because obviously you've thought about this stuff. Seems like you've got some solutions, and that's what we're all about over here. We want to fix problems, not just complain about them. It's about to use a bad word, but I don't want to associate you with that. Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate it.
That is so cool. I want to fix California. I think there's a lot of good people who want to do that, and it starts by making a U-turn politically in that state. Enough is enough. I'm old enough to remember when we had some good leadership in that state, and we can get back there again. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.